Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, DwyerVIP.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Sometimes life is stranger than fiction. Before I talk about Amir Mansour, what I want to do is to just talk about someone who's kind of like him, who history has forgotten. In 1970, in the Rucker Championship Finals in Harlem, New York City, right, a local drug dealer named Joe Hammond, who had not played organized basketball, at least not high school basketball, after the 9th grade, right, showed up to the Rucker Championship and apparently missed the first half of the game. Now, the other team was a team called the West Siders, and they had guys in their lineup named Julius Erving, Charlie Scott, Billy Pauls, Dean Meminger, right? These were guys who were established in the world of basketball. And in the second half of that game, after missing the first half of the game, local drug dealer Joe the Destroyer Hammond, while being guarded by Julius Erving and Charlie Scott, scored 50 points. So dominant was Joe Hammond, and I know there are old-timers watching this video who remember who he was. That Hammond, who never played a day of college basketball, got taken in the 1971 NBA hardship draft by the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, at the time, the Lakers were owned by Jack Kent Cooke. Washington Redskin fans may remember when he owned the Washington Redskins. This is the guy who sold the Lakers to Jerry Buss. They offered Hammond $50,000 a year to play for the Lakers. Hammond, who, if he's to be believed, had his father hiding $50,000 for him in a bank account and had an additional $200,000 stashed in his apartment, refused. He wanted to get paid like the stars got paid at the time, because as Hammond put it, I played against them and I'm better than them. The Lakers refused. Hammond decided not to sign the contract. Understand, Lou Carnesecca at that point was the guy who was getting talent for the New York Nets of the ABA. He offered Hammond a guaranteed no-cut contract. Hammond declined. He didn't think that the NBA or the ABA could pay him the money he was making in the drug trade. Right? So Hammond went back to the life and, of course, never played in the ABA or NBA. Subsequently, his life fell apart. Now, just imagine if, with that background, Hammond got a second chance. He ended up going to prison. Just imagine if, when he got out of prison, the sport was still there for him. Welcome to former cocaine trafficker Amir Mansour. Right? Let me say this, and I don't say it lightly. You've seen one of boxing's best punches, right? The straight, long, bright hand from Deontay Wilder. It's a great punch. It's one punch, knockout, power. It's one of the best punches in the sport, right? It's the punch he used to take out Audley Harrison, right? It's the punch he used to take out many others. Now just imagine if there were a fighter with that kind of power in both hands. One punch, knockout power. Can take you out with the right, can take you out with the left, doesn't even have to put a combination together. Can touch you and put you to sleep. That's Amir Mansour. Right now understand, like Joe Hammond in basketball, he's lived a complicated life. He spent several years in prison. He got out, won a few fights, then of course violated his parole. Right? Couldn't fight again for a while. He's 20-0. He's 41 years old. Right? Certain things that you would imagine a young man would have. Right? A lot of energy, a lot of bounce and stuff like that. They're gone from his body. While he does crouch at times, he doesn't bounce around. He's not going to remind you of young Tyson apart from the punching power. But he's a southpaw. Understand, if you're a fan of the heavyweight division, you need to track southpaws who can avoid jabs, right? Because the key reigning heavyweight champion, now that Vitaly Klitschko is involved in Ukrainian politics, the key active heavyweight champion is his brother Vladimir Klitschko. Southpaws give Vladimir Klitschko problems. If you can dodge that jab, and if you have the power to close the show, if you can jump inside with the kind of hard lefts to the body from the southpaw position that Amir Mansour throws, you'll have a chance. Right? I'm not saying you win the fight, but understand, if you can dodge Vladimir Klitschko's jab, and if you can get inside and do some damage to Vladimir Klitschko's body, if you're not there caught up trying to hit his head, especially when you're only 6'1", like Amir Mansour is, then I believe you have a chance. Now, Mansour's punching power is such that he's rapidly becoming, like Joe Hammond in basketball, an urban legend in boxing. If you go through YouTube and look up Mansour tapes, you're going to see incredible punching power. You're going to see a real determined fighter who knows how to cut off the ring, who finishes guys on the ropes. Right? But his level of competition hasn't been great. You're not going to see a resume that has a lot of contenders on it. That all changes in a few weeks when he fights a guy who has some glass on his jaw, but who also has fast hands, good athleticism, and an excellent jab with some movement. And that's former cruiserweight champion Steve Cunningham. I believe this fight is a must-see. I know Mansour already has one of the biggest punches in boxing. I know Mansour can knock you out from a southpaw stance with a right hook. Forget his left hand, which is lethal. He can take you out with his lead hand. Right? I know Mansour is unbeaten. But what I don't know is how Mansour does in the ring against a world-class fighter. Now, there's a fight up online where he fought Kelvin Price, who clearly was overmatched. Right? But understand, Mansour, who has beaten Dominic Gwynn and a few others, but Mansour has rarely had to go the distance in fights. Right? Also, in the Kelvin Price fight, you'll notice that Mansour has a certain economy of movement. He's not that active. He's not bobbing and stuff. He sits outside. He knows angles. He's not getting hit with the jab. But he's kind of leisurely in his approach. Right? He looks like a guy who's older in the ring. When you're in your 40s, you do have to wonder if the guy could maintain an above average pace for 12 rounds. Right? His punching power is such that it slows down opposing fighters. So he's able to win rounds by literally hitting them with really what I consider to be the best part of his game, hard body shots, right, that take the legs from his opponents. So then the opponents start to drop their hands. You'll notice Kelvin Price doesn't have his hands up like this. You can't when a guy's taking out your rib cage. So opponents will start to drop their hands, and then of course Mansour starts throwing hooks up top. Right? The Cunningham fight's going to be a watershed moment. I think it's hard to bet the fight. Were I to bet the fight, I'd take Cunningham to win, hedged with Mansour by KO. But I'm not even sure if that's possible, odds-wise. Right? But from a fan perspective, you need to watch this guy because he's a hard-hitting southpaw. He has a puncher's chance against whoever he fights. And there is a chance that at 41, this guy, who hasn't been out of prison that long, is a world-class heavyweight. Let me go one step further. I would take him today over Deontay Wilder. I would take him today over Chris Arreola. Okay, fair enough. Right? In my opinion, the best American heavyweight out there, and I'm a guy who believes you're the best until somebody knocks you off, is Tony Thompson, who's also a southpaw. I would say the second best is Bryant Jennings. Right? This guy, though, might be able to put himself in the conversation if he takes care of Steve Cunningham. As you watch him, watch the power. Understand, in boxing, power's the last to go. Right? You'll lose your legs, you'll lose your athleticism, but punchers, think Big George Foreman, seem to keep that power well into their careers. Now, because Mansour didn't have an amateur background, that's important to consider. Right? And because Mansour has literally spent many years on ice, right? He's a young 41 years of age. Right? I think if you're looking for heavyweights, especially American heavyweights, this guy belongs in the conversation. Right? Take a look at his fight against Steve Cunningham. We'll talk about it after the fight takes place. Cunningham might come out and might expose and destroy him. Or Cunningham might come out and end up flat on his back. This guy hits harder than most of the heavyweights out there. In my opinion, he hits like David Haye, only he's not as fast or as athletic as David Haye. Right? There are holes in his game. His head's exposed. He leads with his head. Right? He stands upright a lot. He's front foot heavy. When he's on his back foot, he doesn't really throw a lot of volume. Okay, fair enough. But punching power like this, with more athleticism than, let's say, Bermane Stiverne, deserves your attention. Give a look at this fight. It's an intriguing heavyweight matchup, and as I said before, understand that southpaws who can avoid a jab have a better chance of beating Vladimir Klitschko than most. Right? Just look at the first Tony Thompson fight. Right? Keep that in mind as you give this guy a look. His name's Amir Mansour. He's fighting Steve Cunningham in a few weeks. Thanks for stopping by.